Hello, everybody. Welcome to ConTech Exec Podcast. My name is Robert Zimmerman, your host. And today I've got some veterans here, some podcast veterans, Emma Nazim, Molly Abbott from Constructable. Thanks for being here again today. I know we talked last year a little bit, but I wanted to have y'all back on because really impressed with your product. I like the idea of, everything revolves around the print. And I just wanted to see how things were going. I've been reading your LinkedIn posts, kind of following you all. So, Molly, I'll get you started. Tell me, how are things at, Constructable? What's going on? What are you running into?
Yeah, things are going well. I always love to see my favorite quote is we have good problems. We've got tons of, lots of usage. We've got, lots of activity happening. So it's been great. Things are going quite well.
Okay, so let's talk about that usage a little bit, and I'll shoot it over to you, Emma. Are we talking mid-market users? Are we talking larger scale companies? What are we talking about here? Because this was important today. I just saw a post from somebody today who's talking about, the industry is not the DPRs of the world or the big top ENR 400 companies. The industry is really filled with, smaller operators, mid-sized market folks. So kind of tell me who you're dealing with here and what you're seeing from their perspective.
Yeah, our focus is very much on the mid-market. We say that range, what people call the mid-market versus small versus enterprise, we always find is, I always ask people when they say that, what do you mean? Because it's different to everybody.
So let's go ahead and define
people
that.
Say, oh yeah, we're only $500 million. We're really small. But so what we call our target, our mid-market, is about $20 million in construction volume up to $500 million in construction volume. And I think we talked about this last time. That's really where we felt like there was a gap in the market where the incumbents in the space had just started focusing on companies that were above that and really focused on more enterprise style parts of their product. So that's very much been our focus. What's been interesting is we've actually gotten a lot of people from larger companies reaching out to us with interest in our product. Obviously, the pace at which those companies move and make decisions is very different than the mid-market. But we've actually found they are feeling pain of not having modern, easy-to-use products. I just talked to a very large company who said, well, all our employees are using Notion and Loom, and they feel how fast and snappy and easy to use those products are. Those aren't construction products. And then they come back to their project management software and it just feels slow and they see spinners. And so we are still really thinking about what is that next generation of product that is going to take us through the next decade. And is it going to be the incumbents that are in the space, or are there going to be newer products that come into the market? But yeah, we are still very much focused on the mid-market. We
now you have to educate me. Yeah, I get it. But you're going to have to educate me just a little bit.
Sure.
Because I am old and I have no idea what Notion and Loom are.
Yeah. So Notion is, how would I describe it? I'd say it's almost like the next generation of Wiki that companies use. So you can have a bunch of pages, you can add notes. A lot of companies use it to track internal things. It's very flexible. But when you use products like that, or really any new product that exists, as you navigate through those products, you'll notice the page isn't always refreshing. You're not getting a loading spinner. When you go to download a report, it just downloads. You don't have to wait to get a notification that it's ready in your email. And so that's, as younger people come into the industry, they've used these types of products either personally or while they're in school. I think they're a little bit taken aback when they get to what they're using oftentimes in the field or on a job, where even products that are not, considered some of the older ones in the space are still, they just feel a little bit clunky, a little bit slow. And that's kind of one of the biggest things as we talk to people who use our product that they'll feel immediately. I'm trying to go through a ton of drawings and yours just load really, really fast. And I download things and they download fast. And it feels small, but it's actually what you're spending a ton of your time doing. And so you immediately feel that when you go back to a product that doesn't have that, how much time you're just sitting there waiting for something to appear that you're trying to see.
Yeah, I think we live in a fast food nation, right? We really do.
Yeah.
We get used to having our meal ready for us within, 15 to 20 seconds. And we expect the same thing out of everything. So I get you. I hear what's going on. And I don't know, a lot of times the explanation for some of that kind of stuff is, hey, well, maybe there's, security involved. There's reasons. Otherwise, it's just the fact that change management has not taken place in many of these companies over the last, 10, 15 years because everybody's just deathly afraid of it. And I always like to get to that because I think, and Molly, maybe you can kind of get to this, is when you get pushback from your, clients or potential clients, folks like that. These are the things that you hear first, right? It's like, well, what is this going to do? How long is it going to take to roll out? How are my teams going to be impacted? Am I going to just be giving my teams more work by giving them this application? So I kind of want you to kind of address that a little bit and tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's always a fear. I think as any manager or owner is like, oh, people don't like change, so it always feels very risky. We had a customer that was really interesting. They built their own custom software and they just didn't want to manage it anymore. And so they were talking to us and it kind of opened the owner's eyes because he was asking his team, how do you feel about switching? Like, we've been doing this for years. And his whole team was like, please, like, let's please switch off of this. And he was shocked, right? He was shocked because he was like, I was thinking it would be the opposite.
Yeah. He
To
thought
switch
they were
off this.
drinking the punch, right? Oh, yeah,
Right.
y'all are drinking the
Right.
punch over here.
Yeah, and we've made onboarding very smooth and the transition easy, and we know, we want to be very personable, and so we make sure that they get to know us, and it doesn't feel as big as and scary. I think the other thing that comes up as a big fear is, especially our GCs who are inviting a lot of external users. They're just like, oh, last time I did this, it was so hard to get consultants or architects or subcontractors to start using this new platform. What we found is they're already using other platforms, and so it's like no problem. It's an easy switch, and in fact, we have people reach out to us who are not subscribers of our product. They're just like external users, saying how much they appreciate our product and like our product, and it's smoother, and they're excited about us. So
And we talked
yeah.
about this before, but are you finding that the GCs of the world are the kind of ones that are adopting your product the most to be able to disseminate the information to the trades, or is it the other way around where your specialty contractors are kind of really adopting it because it's a place where they can keep their details in line?
We've seen a mix. Our product does handle the full scope of what a general contractor needs, and that is the majority of our customers. Because so many subcontractors use our product, though, and get invited, we've actually had a number reach out and say they would love to have a portion of our product for their team. There's some things they don't necessarily need. For instance, it's typically the GC that's managing the submittal process. And so having a full submittal workflow is very important for a GC who will use our product. But if you're an electrical company or a concrete company, you still need somewhere to store all your drawings and make sure your team is looking at the most recent revision. You still need a place to manage all of your documents that you're creating that might not be shared with you from a GC. You might be working with a GC who doesn't have software and just sends you a bunch of PDFs, and you're constantly trying to figure out what the recent revision is.
Yeah, good times.
You're taking
right
your
there.
own photos, you're taking your own daily logs, you're tracking your own team's hours. And so we do actually offer a tier of our product that does work really well for that subset of tools that trades need. And so we've actually gotten customers from the subs of some of our GC customers which has been really awesome, where, they still may be logging into a Procore or Constructable or Autodesk, but there's still their own information that's not going to come from the GC, or the GC doesn't have things organized well, and now they have a place to keep things where their team can be really, really well organized with all their projects.
That was the most difficult thing for me when they first started. It was an early adopter on Procore, back when I was still, out in the field doing my thing. I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was. But that was one of the most difficult things was, again, we had a GC, or somebody like that there where there's a new set of drawings coming out. And you're trying to get everybody on the same page. And the client is saying you need to be on, Procore. So everybody's supposed to be on Procore, but then not everybody knows how to use it properly, or they're not, there was redundant information somehow, or it seemed as though that you couldn't find it. It was like you'd go into the weekly meeting and they would be like, oh, yeah, I didn't know about this, and this. And somebody would finally go, well, it's here in the RFI portion, in Procore, or it's over here. And I didn't know how to get to that. So I didn't see it. There's always this kind of thing. So is that still happening, I guess, today, where you've got some companies that are more organized than others, and you're still finding just miscommunication of them? I didn't really use that. We were actually on, I was looking at the schedule on P6. I didn't see it over here, or whatever. Are you still seeing that today, where it's just this, we're trying to get people all on the same page, but nobody wants to read from the same book?
Do you want me to answer that, Emma?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think it's gotten a lot better. People are used to using software and apps and stuff like that today. I mean, when we first got into this industry, it's just a mountain of PDFs, and it's hard to keep track of that. So there are companies that are, better than others. For the most part, I mean, with our product, as far as notifications go, I think there's almost too much getting sent out, and there's too much information, as time has gone on. And so I think it's more important than ever to keep track of all of this. But we are very careful about, tracking who, ball in court and your notifications and all of that stuff. So that doesn't seem to be a huge issue with us. I think our GCs are very clear about, this is where the latest revision is, and here's the documents that you need to access, and it's all in one spot, which I think other companies really appreciate.
Very good. Helping people organize, not only themselves, but helping others get organized as well. I think it's a big deal. And I think that leads me to my next thing about this. And it's something that we always talk about on podcasts, on the podcast here, and even in my newsletters and things like that. I don't know that the problem with construction has a lot to do with lack of technology, right? And I think we made him address this before. We find a lot of the times that people just have broken processes that are creating a mountain of, I don't know, you got blinders on, you're trying to, get things done. You're trying out there to do what you're trying to do, but you don't even have time to analyze where you're breaking down sometimes. It's just, we've been kind of doing it this way, and, every day is a new fire to put out, I think. And I think there are solutions out there. Again, your solution is a great solution. There's solutions out there for people. How do we get them to recognize it, that it's there for them? How do we get them to open up their eyes?
Well, what we do is we often just ask people questions. And because a lot of times when we talk to people, I think there's things that they've learned to live with and don't realize are a problem necessarily. They're not feeling the pain. They've just gotten used to it. And so, for example, a company, if we talk to a company and they're not using any software, because I will say this is not solving which drawing to look at is not unique to us. Procore solves that. Autodesk solves that. That's kind of the foundation of all these products, is what's the most recent revision. But when we talk to a company who still has all their documents in Dropbox, that's sort of the first question I'll ask is, well, how much time do you spend organizing that in Dropbox and making sure your team is looking at the most recent revision? And what's that process when you get 4 new sheets? You don't get a whole new set. So you can't say this is the most recent set. You just get 4 new sheets. And now people have to know to look at those 4 new sheets plus the 200 sheets that were sent before. What do you do? And just getting them to talk through that often triggers also people realizing times where something's gone wrong. And so rather than just telling people they're, doing something that's not as efficient as it can be, our strategy is and that helps us learn too how these things are working for people. But we try to just kind of have them talk us through what's going on. And I think it has some light bulbs going off for people when we ask those kind of questions.
Well, add to that too, like I think construction is very unique in that the problems that people have are like high stress problems. There's a concrete pour at 2 a.m, or they installed something wrong, or they're like very high stress problems, and it's not correlated to software. And so when you talk to them, when you ask about their problems, their problems are much bigger than them thinking about software. So like when you really dig in and ask about processes, you kind of shed some light on that, because most of the things they're trying to solve are like big deals that are immediate and urgent. And so it's really hard to stop and think about the processes because it's in that, that quadrant that's like important and, not urgent. So it always gets like pushed to the side.
Yeah.
So
I think what they don't see about software sometimes is how it can help them in the early stages of their project development, whether that be in the estimation stage, having the ability to look back on historical data and go, hey, by the way, last time we bid said this kind of typical project. If you're a drywall company, framing company, you're doing the same kind of processes often many times, and there's a lot of similar conditions surrounding them. You're probably going to be in a concrete shell of some sort. There's probably not going to be a lot of weather protection, unless you're doing like remodels, those kind of things. So there's a lot of similar functions that we do. And so I think from what they don't seem to understand is that there's no big bang theory here where it's all of a sudden you're going to hit a big button and all your problems are going to be solved. Everything that they do from estimation to budgeting to pre-construction or prefab on a job, everything that they do in these sections is going to affect obviously the final outcome. And it's also going to affect where these fires always seem to pop up, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not utilizing technology to kind of monitor, are these fires consistent? Every time we do this kind of job, does this always seem to pop up, right? And so if they're not using technology to do that these days, that's where they're missing the boat. And they're not understanding that technology is not a solution for the whole process. Most of the time it's a solution for a part of the process that then needs to integrate to that next portion so that they kind of all talk together. But again, this is what happens, and what I say, and this is what's important in the mid markets and the smaller companies, is that they need to understand that this products we're trying to give them, right, in the technology industry, is not a one size fits all solution that's going to take care of your every worry, right?
Mhm.
What we're trying to do is show you, hey, by the way, when we solve a problem, we solve it incrementally. We have a small portion here that we're going to solve, and once we get that portion done, hey, great. Now let's move on to the next one. And I think you probably see that too, even in your software development, right?
Mhm.
As you're developing, it's not like you're going to have this one big aha moment and go, oh, this is going to solve all that. No, it's marginal. It's, this
Mhm.
little improvement creates this next step.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. So do you see that with some of your current clients? Have they had that aha moment go, oh, okay, that has solved this little problem, and then maybe it moves to the next one?
We have yes, I like that. I think maybe you or somebody on LinkedIn was talking about like it moves by inches, it's like just incrementally getting better, and we see that too. One example of that, I think, in our software is we have a lot of collaboration features on the drawings. We've talked about that. Like, we believe everything should stem from the drawings. And so one of our projects, a project that's using our software, it's a $25 million project. I'm chatting with the architects and all the people. I go out there quite a bit. And one of them commented to me and said, if we didn't have these collaboration features, we would have more than double the RFIs on this project. Like, other similar types of projects have double. And so that's helped, create trust, to have the team work better together, like a lot less paperwork. And so that was like an inch forward, right? If we can all work a little bit better together, just with RFIs, you're saving a lot of time on the project, and then there's less fires to put out. So,
Right.
yeah.
I like the ideas of less fires to put out. But I think it's the fires. And to y'all's point, we don't have time to focus on, these solutions somehow, but yet we know we need them. Being a groundbreak last year, it's just one of those things. I saw 10,000 people walking around. What it looked like, and half of them were just trying to figure out where to get started. There's so much out there that they could. I got to go over here. Oh yeah, I probably need something like that. And in the mid market, small sizes, we're also talking about money constraints and things like that. Like, what's the best bang for your buck, right? How much? What's going to work the best, and the dollar spend. Do you think that the industry is coming around to seeing technology as not something in the overhead column and something more in the asset column sometime soon?
I think, to be fair, what we find is people try a ton of software. And I actually think one of the problems is there's too much.
Yeah, I think that's a bad idea as well, right? You can't try out everything under the sun and think it's all going to somehow work together.
Well, right. And that's, but people try things that have this big promise and it doesn't work. It just isn't there. It doesn't pay off. It's hard to use. It's a software that makes things harder, or it's a software that's working and then they go to do their renewal and they say, well, we've raised our price 20%, even though nothing's changed. And now the software does become hard to justify. And so, we do talk to a lot of people who just kind of feel burned by technology. It's not that they don't see the value in it. It's that it's been really hard to wade through all the things that are available. And to your point, spend the time on it, because there is an upfront cost to learning about software, implementing it. It is incremental to start to see those improvements. You don't see things on day one, with a lot of these products.
Do you think that's something that tech could learn from construction? True, to be honest with their client, and also be honest with themselves about, hey, by the way, once if I'm an old construction guy, let's try to put it in the right context. I'm an old construction guy. You burn me once, you've burned my trust, right? If you promised me the moon, and you're a tech company and you've promised me the moon and said, I can reduce your cost 30 to 40%. You see all that kind of stuff all the time. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. It's too hard to work. There's a divide that tends to happen there, quite honestly. And in construction, it's, again, you burn me once, I'm never going to trust you again. And I think that's the big difference between, because you can't make it, when you make a construction mistake, it doesn't go away very easily, right? You put that wall in the wrong place, you pour the concrete in the wrong space. Guess what? That's costly. It's expensive. It's not the right thing. It's not like making a software mistake. It's like, oh, I made a boo-boo. We're going to have to go back and, readjust that. And then we're going to try it again. Doesn't work like that. Do you see that a little bit kind of in that divide between kind of construction and technology?
Do you want to answer, Molly?
You can go. You can finish. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of the case almost in any vertical software. Like, your software has it's a very emotional process to bring in a new partner, to give them trust. Even people know this in construction, even mid-size and large companies are often family businesses. We're talking to the owners of these companies, not just someone in procurement. And so they're putting a lot of trust in you, especially that they're going to ask their team to use your product. So, of course, mistakes are kind of the worst case scenario, but I think even down to just, I've asked people to use something that feels hard to use, feels really, really bad, because these people's jobs are so busy. And to Molly's point, the biggest problems in construction are not solved by software. And we'll always be very upfront about that. Like, the biggest problems we see when we go to a job site are that it just rained 4 inches and they're dealing with mud, and they had to send a bunch of people on Saturday to go cover up all the dirt. And like, there is just so much chaoticness like that I think, software adding one more thing just feels really, really bad. And, people are quick to say like, hey, look, this just isn't going to work. And then they lose trust in the next software that they're going to work with. So
it makes your job that much harder.
Yeah. Yeah, we do try to be really upfront. Like, we'll be the first to say, our product does not do everything Procore does. Our product does not do everything Autodesk does. We're a newer product. We have 15 less years of, development, and a lot less, we're a smaller team. But the things that we do, we want to do really, really well. And we will have those things in the future. But, we're not going to promise people like those are coming next week when you sign up with us. We're going to be very upfront that if the most important things to you that you feel like are going to move your business forward the most are not things we have today, we're just not going to be a good fit for you right now.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that works to your advantage, quite honestly, especially in the mid-sized small markets. Works to your advantage to be straightforward. It's like, hey, here's what we have to offer. Does this solve some of the things that you're trying to solve? Not everything. Because I know a Procore of the world or an Autodesk of the world will go, this thing should do everything that you need it to do. And here's the price tag. But I do think that would work to your advantage to go, hey, by the way, does this work for you? That offering, hey, does this work? And if it doesn't, great, let's try something else. Right.
And what we've learned too is, while you can say yes on paper, what we find in reality when we talk to companies using these products is they thought they would be using a lot of those features, and they're not, because they've been so hard to learn and so hard to get their employees up and running on.
I found the exact same things.
Yeah, we'd always rather have less that is just working really, really well, and just be upfront. Hey, we don't check that box right now, because we want to spend the time, do it when we do get there. We want things to work seamlessly. We want them to work super well. We want them to be easy to adopt. And so we need to make sure we're not spreading ourselves too thin.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic as well, because then you also get into these, and I've had this happen, where you get into a larger company who then start to, you offer a solution, right? You offer a specific solution that fits into whether it's operations or pre-construction or contracts or wherever it is. And then they're like, well, can it do this as well? And it kind of moves into this gray area, right? Where it's like, can it do that? And it often comes down to the technologist or the technology company to go, is that something we even want to get into? Right? Is that worth it? And a lot of times you'll have these very, very large contracts, and then you get into that weird sales dynamic. You got the salesperson over here going, yes, we want this multi-million-dollar contract, but the software doesn't quite get there. You know what I mean? It's a little gray area you want to step into. So I'm sure you've had that, maybe that experience, right?
I've seen that everywhere I've worked. Molly and I's background is not sales. If any of our customers or our prospects are listening to this, Molly and I are who you talk to in the sales process. Yeah. So we are very much learning. And this is one, I think, of those core challenges. I'm so impressed when I see a salesperson. I have so much respect for salespeople now that I do it a lot, that you learn to handle. But it's exactly, I think, what you said earlier, which is you can get in this mindset, and this isn't unique to construction. This is when you're buying anything, that you almost get overwhelmed with how much you want to solve and lose sight of the core problems you want to solve, where you get in this mode of, well, if nothing can solve everything for me, I'm not going to buy anything.
Yes.
and you're back to where you were. And I think it's just, what we do up front, and this is like very typical, I think, of any sales process, is the most important thing is to understand what are the critical things someone is trying to solve in their business, for their employees, for their own personal life. And just bring them back to that and remind them, like, this is why you wanted to talk to us, is for these reasons. We would love to address these other areas for you in the future, but let's really, really focus on how we're going to solve the problems that are the priority for you. Make sure that's working really well. And then we'll have a partnership once you're working with us where we can go from there and continue to work on these other areas.
See, I think that's great. And that's what construction companies need. Again, because they're so heads down focused on, and I'm talking again, mid-markets. They don't have an R&D team. They don't necessarily have a complete IT department at some points, and they don't have a CIO, innovation director, or anything like that. And they have probably, maybe zero interest in it, but they know they have to have it. But they got nobody kind of to lead the charge. And so I think it is up to these tech companies like yours, these software providers, to kind of take that mantle and be honest with those folks about what the product does, where it can go, where it can take you, and then also what its limitations are, where we don't want to go with this, because we're heading off into territory that it's really just going to muddy the waters, right?
Yes, having custom software and simplicity are like the opposites, and so it's hard when people get into that. Like if
But
they
they
want
ask for
custom
it.
this or custom that, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, that's gonna, that we want simple and easy to use, and it sounds like you do too. So there's just there's some give and take there. But yeah, we don't talk to many like CIOs. We love when we're on a call and the project manager joins from the trailer.
Yeah.
Wearing his PPE, joining the Zoom. You can hear all the noise in the background because they blurt out their real use cases, like this is what I need it to do. This is, they give examples like just yesterday this happened,
Mhm.
so.
I think that's cool too, because that's another place where when I get involved with a client, and I don't really, as much as I love talking to the owner, because I can commiserate, having owned my own company and done those things, I can commiserate where they've been, what they're doing, what's going on. But a lot of time we get this glossy view, or we like to portray a glossy view of the way our company's going, and we don't really get down into the real dirt, right? Of, hey, I can find a lot out if I give me 15 minutes with a couple of superintendents, or give me 15 minutes with your payroll administration folks, and I bet you I can find out probably where some of your bottlenecks are showing up. And it probably doesn't have a lot to do with your software. Again, a lot of the time, that's where you find it out. It's like, yeah, I'm having a problem with this, this, and this, and this. They could list off, 15,000 things, just in that short conversation. Is that where you guys
Yeah.
find your most value?
You really need to focus on both, honestly, because, we need buy-in from everyone. It's a big change. We do learn a ton, and sometimes we will talk to, the people in the field and learn something that the owner didn't even realize was a problem. But at the same time, the owner is who is signing a check to us. And needs to be confident that we are going to solve problems across the board for the organization, because, our product will get used by everyone, depending on, which one of our tiers you use, everyone from the field to the accounting team, plus themselves. So yeah, we think it's really, really important to understand what problems are they trying to solve at all those levels. And our product also does touch all those areas.
Yeah. Well, again, you always get into trying to, you kind of want to stay away from the power dynamic a little bit, where, obviously we know who's in charge and all these kind of things, but we want to create a communication level to make not only the software work better, but to make the company that it's working with it work better. Right. And when the power dynamic gets involved, it gets a little scary.
actually found it's interesting in construction, having just worked in some other industries, is I find construction is actually much more the owner wants to include their team in the sales process and have them try the product and be bought in, almost to the point sometimes where it's actually hard to make a decision because you know,
Feel like it's decision by committee. Yeah.
Exactly. Decision by committee. But I've found that almost more than anything. We'll have a demo booked with one person and 9 people will show up. And I'm like, who are all these people? I invited one and we'll very quickly learn who everyone is. And it's the estimator and the project manager and the lead superintendent. And they'll want to make sure, they'll say, this looks great. My team needs to give me a thumbs up before I do anything. I need to be able to get your mobile app in the hands of my superintendents and make sure they're going to be happy. My accountants need to be happy. I find it's actually kind of a really, really great, it's really feels good to see those relationships within a company and how much owners of a construction company just really care about their employees.
That is true. That is true. And again, it goes back to the whole trust dynamic. Obviously, when they want everybody involved, you want to make sure everybody's happy at the end, and you don't want to burn that bridge ever, right? You want to maintain that. You want to maintain that trust level.
And we have actually heard stories multiple times now of people quitting a company they worked at because they had to use bad software.
Multiple times.
Really?
Yes.
And was it a generational thing, or was it just specifically? It was like people were just like, yeah, I'm just not doing it. They're just behind the times.
Yeah, it does tend to be younger people who come into a company and realize the software is so hard to use and they were used to using something else somewhere previous, or the company changes software, or they've been somewhere a while and they've just seen, they're using some old custom thing, and have not even considered switching to any kind of, any product even from 2010 and beyond.
I had somebody talk to me the other day, and he had taken I have an AI readiness score. It's really more about a software readiness score. It's on my website. And the guy took it, and then, basically he scored the company he's working for all ones. And he was like, yeah, I knew that's where we would score it. And I said, yeah, that's terrible. And he says, I got to move on. He goes, because I can't any longer work for this company that has, zero concept of what the future will look like with this, non-technical, same old situation that they're in, right? They refuse to move forward. They told him he thought too much. It's that was kind of the quote. You're too smart. You're thinking too much about it, and stop. It was isn't that what you hire people to do? Really, when you come in, you want them to think, to do their job. You want them to and provide the best solutions, because if you're an owner or you're in the management, you don't have all the answers. That's what you hire people to do. You can't do all the work yourself. And it's so strange that you say that, because I think we're going to really start to see a generation, and it's been talked about before in many things, where the younger generation is so adept at using technology these days. They've grown up with it, that they're going to walk into a job, and retention is going to be a problem, because they're not using technology the way it should be used, right? It's too dated. It's not something, and they're going to see that this company has zero growth potential because it's stuck in 1990, right?
Yeah, I say that a lot. I mean, the younger generation, even, all of us now use our phones and mobile apps, consumer apps that have really good user experience, and they're really intuitive, really easy to use. So now all of a sudden we're used to these really easy to use, mobile apps. And so when you get on something that's too hard to use, you can really feel it these days, so.
And it is difficult. There is a balance. And I will say that there is a balance, because it does depend on the company that you go to work for. We know that the small and mid-sized markets, they employ probably 90% of the actual folks out there in construction. We also know that these same folks don't necessarily have the means or the methods to buy the latest and greatest software, right? And that's just one part of it. And secondly, they don't necessarily have the means or the methods to implement said software. They don't have the folks that understand the best ways to roll this out or get the most out of a product as well. So they're kind of up against this double whammy where we're kind of faced with, hey, you're going to have to really think about this, and you're really going to have to focus. It's going to have to become probably more of a focus than maybe day-to-day operations sometimes. You're going to have to put a couple of hours a day into just thinking about what your future is going to look like as we step into, 2026, 2027, especially when I call the age of AI. We're staring it in the face here. I know everybody's worried about losing their jobs. In the construction industry, I don't know that you got a lot to worry about, especially, right now, unless the robots actually decide to take over. But in the construction industry, I think we really do have to embrace it a little bit more and see how it becomes a helper to us, especially some of these mid-market companies. Just because it's going to be, from what I can see, it's going to be the deciding factor on whether you get future jobs or not. Especially if you're a subcontractor wanting to work for larger GCs, you're going to have to come to the table with a digital receipt. How's your safety program look? How are you tracking your RFIs? What's your history on, being able to resolve situations in the RFIs or submittals? What's your history with all that? And they kind of bring the digital receipts with you. So that's why I'm always interested in companies like Constructable, because I think you're coming at it from the right angle, right? Again, you guys know, just from your construction background, Molly, is the fact that everything revolves around the print. Everything revolves around that. And I think it's a great structure that's where we come from. And the more we build upon that, I think that's the best thing that we can do, is, hey, let's get involved around the plan, right? And then the elements can come together around the plan to really create a good communication.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone needs to be on the same page, and we want to give them an easy way to be on the same page. And yeah, we want our software to be accessible, easy to use, all of those things, because the mid-market does, they $20 million is a lot of money that you have to, manage where it is and what's happening and all that stuff. That's like not something that's easy to do. And so, yeah, we feel very strongly that,
And I will always,
yeah,
well, we got to keep them on the same page.
Yep.
And guess what? $20 million is only $20 million. That's revenue. That's for suckers. You know what I mean? If you spend $21 million, guess what? You're $1 million in the hole. And it's just a fact, right? If you're not keeping track. So it's not about what you make. It's about what you spend, right?
Yes.
And so it's saving a few dollars here and there. So speaking about that, let's talk about 2026 and what Constructable kind of has in front of it. How are things looking, and what can we expect? Is there anything new coming to the product that people are going to want to know about?
We've got a lot of new things. It's funny to think about things in a year-long period, because we've actually built our entire product in a year and a half. So a year feels like an eternity to me right now. But some big areas for us are on the financial side. We want as much as possible to be automated for getting data in, for tracking your financials, kind of just what you said, knowing right away when something is trending to going over budget or having a higher cost. And so the purpose of that being that you just always have your financials at your fingertips. And there's a lot of different things involved in that. There's things where we can just automate certain processes and make them much faster. For instance, as you're doing your monthly invoicing, helping you, even if you get a big stack of PDF invoices, just get those in an automated way, but also integrating with your ERP. We've got a number of integrations coming out with different ERPs. Having a fully built-in document signing process. We already have that for change orders, but expanding that so you have it for commitments, for lien waivers, for pay applications, and not just integrating with a DocuSign for that, where have one more software you have to manage, you have to pay a check to. We're actually thinking about that in a very different way, where we would have something just fully built into our product so that feels really, really seamless. Doesn't feel like you're jumping to a product. Doesn't need to be one more product you have an account manager with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody else to write a check to, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we write enough checks. Yeah, we write enough checks these days. We pay enough people. I don't need anybody else that with their hand out.
Yeah. So that's one big area of focus for us. We have a lot more. Molly, do you want to talk about any other ones?
Yeah, I'm also really excited about some just exciting features around, plans, extracting information from the plans and surfacing insights. I'm excited for that. We've got a lot around even just task management too, making that easy, much, much easier. But yeah, we're focused on financials for right now, and a lot of those making things very automated. So,
well, that's good. That's good. That's what we want in the industry. Again, the idea behind software is to automate some of those tasks that you would ultimately spend, maybe hours on, and actually put it into minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea, again, as I keep saying, the idea of technology, and you guys certainly agree, is to not to put more on your plate, but to take stuff off of your plate. Being able to have people handle things and have software handle things that would normally take longer and just make it a shorter period of time. So that's great.
I think on the financial side too, obviously saving people time is really critical, but actually the main thing to solve is when people just don't do something at all because it takes time. And what we've seen, which has really surprised us, is when we move customers off incumbent products, I won't name names, but when they're using their financial suite, it's never up to date.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, I kind of have things here, and then I go look in my ERP, and then I go look in these 4 spreadsheets I have, and actually this is behind by 3 months because it's just so annoying to put in. And so that's the last thing.
Yeah, you got that bottleneck of one person who only knows that information. And if that person is sick or out that day, and there's total chaos because that, I want to say, tribal knowledge, that siloed knowledge is now uncapturable. You can't get to it. You don't know. And then the unsurety, that is an insecure feeling, and it also creates more mistakes, because whether it creates mistakes in time or hesitation or the ability to make a move when it needs to be made, that's troublesome. Very troublesome. The many problems of the construction world, right? And we can't solve them all, but we can solve a few of them, right?
Yes. There's lots of opportunities in this space.
There is lots of opportunities in space. And I appreciate, again, 45 minutes goes by really quick these days. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be with me again today. And until next time, everybody, y'all stay safe out there on the job sites. Have a good 2026. I'm excited for this year, and I'm sure that the folks at Constructable are as well. Thank you both for being here with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.